A straight road, endless and empty, cutting across the desert like a thought that hasn't been questioned. It tells you, this is space, this is geometry, this is certainty. Now imagine a second rider, beside me, always beside me. If the world were truly flat, we'd ride forever, never meeting. But the earth is a sphere, and paths that seem parallel eventually collide. So too with thought, with perception, with self. We think we ride in straight lines, but lines curve. Certainties bend, assumptions fold into mirage. Today we ride not just through the desert, but into the shape of space itself, and then inward, into the shape of the one who sees. From flat earth to curved space, from flesh to pure awareness. We begin with the surface and follow the road to its depth. Geometry began with a very simple question. How do lines behave? Around 300 BCE, in classical Greece, Euclid of Alexandria composed The Elements, a 13-book masterpiece of logic and abstraction. It didn't just teach geometry, it became a blueprint for reasoning itself. His 5 postulates laid the foundation for geometry and for what we now call Euclidean space: flat, infinite, predictable. But one postulate stood apart, the 5th, the parallel postulate. It claimed that if you draw a line and pick a point off of that line, only one other line can pass through the point without ever intersecting the original. It seemed less elegant, less self-evident. For centuries, mathematicians tried to derive it from the other 4. None succeeded. Then, in the early 19th century, 2 minds on opposite sides of Europe, Nikolai Lobachevsky in Russia and János Bolyai in Hungary, dared to ask, what if this postulate isn't necessary? What if space can be curved? Lobachevsky imagined hyperbolic space, where parallel lines diverge like rays of light in water. Bolyai reached similar conclusions, publishing them against his father's wishes. Their heresy would become one of mathematics' greatest revolutions. Shortly after, Bernhard Riemann, a shy, devout German mathematician, took these insights further. In an 1854 lecture, he introduced the idea of Riemannian geometry, instead of assuming what space is, defined by how it curves. His formulation used abstract constructs, manifolds, metrics, tensor calculus, to describe the very shape of reality. It was Riemann's flexible notion of geometry that Einstein turned to in 1915 when he published his general theory of relativity. Gravity, Einstein realized, wasn't a force pulling objects toward each other. It was the result of mass warping spacetime. Objects follow curved paths not because they're pushed or pulled, but because they move naturally along the geodesics of a deformed manifold. In a Euclidean world, 2 motorcyclists heading north along parallel roads would never meet. But in a curved space, those paths bend like great circles on a globe and eventually intersect. But now, let's go deeper. Not into vastness, but into minuteness. As we scale down to the quantum realm, geometry becomes stranger still. In quantum field theory, particles aren't little balls in space. They are excitations of underlying fields, mathematical entities that stretch across spacetime. These fields interact on curved manifolds, shaped by the energy they contain. Gravity becomes geometry, and geometry becomes dynamic. At even smaller scale, theorists explore ideas like Calabi manifolds, multi-dimensional shapes proposed in string theory. These aren't science fiction. They're attempts to reconcile gravity and quantum mechanics by proposing that space itself may curl up in tiny, compact dimensions beyond the three we know. In this view, the universe isn't just expanding, it's vibrating, folded, and flexing on levels too small for the eye or even the most sensitive instrument to detect. In loop quantum gravity, space is quantized, not continuous, but woven from discrete loops of geometry. In non-commutative geometry, if you turn right and then turn left, it is not the same as if you turn left and then turn right, and the idea of a point in space begins to dissolve. These are not metaphors. These are rigorous mathematical structures, describing a reality where space is not a static canvas, but a dynamic actor. So the road we ride on may seem straight, but its atoms swirl. Its molecules dance in probabilistic clouds. Beneath the smooth asphalt lies a fabric that folds, fluctuates, and refuses to be flat. And just as we've had to let go of the simplicity of Euclid to embrace the richness of Riemann, so too we need to revise our inner maps to accommodate the strangest of reality as it truly is. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, a profound vision of the self unfolds, not as a single entity, but as 5 concentric layers. These are the koshas, sheaths that veil the true self, the Atman. The Upanishad, composed between 600 and 500 BCE, belongs to a group of ancient Indian philosophical texts that form the end of the Vedas, Vedanta, or the culmination of knowledge. The koshas offer a map of experience, each one subtler than the last, inviting us to turn inward and recognize what we are, not by adding layers, but by peeling them away. The Annamaya kosha, the physical body, is made of food, flesh, and bone. It is what we see, touch, and carry. It is the road, the motorbike, the hand on the throttle. The Pranamaya kosha is the vital energy. This is breath, circulation, digestion. It moves us, animates us. It's the engine running within. The Manomaya kosha is the mind, thoughts, emotions, desires. It interprets the world, reacts, labels. The Vijnanamaya kosha, the intellect, is the discernment, the will, the identity. It chooses, it navigates. It says, I am this. The Anandamaya kosha, the bliss sheath, is the peace, the silence, the deep sleep without a dream, the still presence. And beyond all of them, the Atman, the true self, not a sheath, not a form, but pure awareness. Just as non-Euclidean geometry shows that space is not what it seems, the kosha model reveals the self is not what it seems either. You think you are the body until you see breath move without effort. You think you are the mind until a thought disappears and you remain. You think you are the thinker until thinking ceases and awareness persists. Like tunneling inward through more subtle and more subtle scales of experience, each kosha reveals something more fundamental. Neti, not this, not that, until only witnessing remains. The koshas are not errors. they're approximations. Just as Euclid's geometry is not wrong, it's local, contextual. The mistake is thinking the local is the whole. When we recognize the koshas, we begin to see the self is not an object. It is the background in which all experience arises. The geometry of the self is curved inward, layer by layer, until it opens into the infinite. This is the Upanishadic insight. He who sees all beings in the self and the self in all beings never turns away. He who sees all beings in the self and the self in all beings never turns away. As in space, so in awareness. The surface is not the end. Let us step back now. Motorbike humming beneath us, wind in a helmet, and ask, what have we really seen? A desert road that seems flat but isn't. A world that seems solid but pulses with quantum uncertainty. A self that seems singular but is layered like folded silk. As above, so within. In both realms, the physical and the contemplative, our first assumption is that we already see things as they are. The world is flat, solid, and still. Then the self is singular and known. But then come the anomalies, the parallel lines that cross each other, the breath that moves without you thinking about it, the moment of stillness in which your thoughts vanish, but you do not. In non-Euclidean geometry, a triangle drawn on a curved surface behaves differently. On a sphere, the sum of its angles is more than 180 degrees. In hyperbolic space, it is less. The surface changes the shape of certainty. And so with awareness. On the surface, through the Annamaya and the Pranamaya koshas, we seem to live in a solid mechanical world. Eat, breathe, sleep, repeat. But deeper in, at the level of mind, intellect, and bliss, the rules begin to change. What seemed like fixed truths, I am this body, I am my thoughts, begin to curve. Not disappear, curve. You realize awareness is not in the body is in awareness. The intellect, like a triangle, begins to warp on the surface of this deeper space. Try to hold a fixed identity, and it slips. Try to grasp the moment, and it flows. And what's striking is that in both mathematics and mysticism, the more precise the inquiry, the more profound the letting go. Riemann gave us geometry without a fixed background. Einstein used it to describe a universe that bends. The Upanishads gave us a self without edges. The great Hindu sage Shankara used it to teach liberation without division. And here's the thing. Neither tradition denies form. The physicist still draws triangles. The sage still eats, walks, and sleeps. But now they know. The straight lines they once trusted are not truly straight. They bend in the presence of depth. In quantum geometry, a particle is not where it is where you ask about it. In Vedantic inquiry, the self is not what you believe, it's what remains when belief ends. And so we ride, not to escape the world, but to see it truly. Not to deny the road, but to know it only appears straight. Not to discard thought, but to follow it until it dissolves into silence. The blending of realms isn't a fusion, it's a recognition. The truth wears many faces. The clarity is a paradox. And that the deeper you go into space-time or self, the more the straight lines begin to curve. The Thar Desert road stretches on, straight and flat. But nothing is ever truly that. Underneath, the planet curves. Within, awareness deepens. We began with geometry, of triangles, of space, of time. We passed through breath and thought, into silence. And now, no answer remains, just the ride. The Taittiriya Upanishad says, "That which is not spoken by speech, but by which speech is spoken, know that alone as Brahman." This is not the conclusion, it's the return. Return to the stillness behind motion, the space behind form, the awareness behind identity. And as the bike hums and the sun leans west, we ride, not away from truth, but into the curve where truth begins.